Hello, dear friends. Shavua Tov. This is Parashat Bo, Tafshin Pei Hey. And I'd like to talk about the 10 plagues a little bit. Now, the 10 plagues are in two different parashot. It starts off in Va'era as the first seven, and the last three are in Bo. And it appears that originally the Makot, the plagues, were supposed to be actually only one. Because at the beginning we find that God says to Moshe, go down to Paro and say to him, B'ni Bechori Israel, Israel is my firstborn. If you do not send, or mean release, my firstborn, I will kill your firstborn. So it looks like Makat Bechorot, which was the final plague, the one of the killing of the firstborn, was supposed to be possibly the only plague. Why were there then so many? This actually, God says multiple times to Moshe. I'm not sure at the beginning if Moshe gets the idea. Basically, what God says is, I want also the Egyptians to know that I'm God. So God is basically saying, I have two purposes here. There are two ends two things that I have to fulfill. One is I have to release, of course, the Israelites from servitude. But it's important to me that the Egyptians know that there's only one God. And also later, Rabot Moftai Beretz Mitzrayim, I want to have more wonders in Egypt. And even after 5 times, when Pharaoh's heart is hardened by himself, and then finally after the 5th time, it looks like Pharaoh is going to give in, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why? Because God wants the Egyptians to know that there's only one God. This is a very important point. And I'm sure Moshe was probably thinking, just take them out. Why is it so important for the Egyptians to know that there's a God? But remember, the God is the universe. And therefore, he also wants the Egyptians to give them a chance and to know that there's only one God. Whether they take it or not, that depends, of course, upon them. So I've heard these things concerning the 10 plagues. How exactly do the 10 plagues play out? In the sense of, how does it explain to the Egyptians that there's only one God? I want to explain this based on a little research I did concerning the Egyptian Pantheon. There are over 30 gods in the Egyptian Pantheon, and they seem to connect very well to the plagues. So I want to talk about this. Let's go over each plague, and I'll explain to you how each plague is really there in order to show challenges to the various gods of the Egyptian deity. Number 1, water to blood, which is the first plague, meaning the water of the Nile turns to blood. This directly challenged the Egyptian god Hapi, H-A-P-I, god of the Nile, and Khnun, the guardian of the Nile. It also challenged Osiris, as the Nile was considered his bloodstream of this god. The reddening of the water mocked Sekhmet, who was associated with blood and power. So right in the first plague, there's already a challenge to 4 gods of Egypt to show that they are impotent. The second one is called frogs, and that challenged Heket. Heket was a frog-headed goddess of fertility and birth. And the ironic twist here is you take a sacred symbol of life and it becomes an instrument of misery, because the frogs were associated with Hapi's fertility aspects. The next one, which is in Hebrew we say kinim, or lice, or gnats. This challenged the Egyptian god Geb, god of the earth and the dust. Notably, the Egyptian priests couldn't replicate this plague, breaking their claim to magical power. The next one, after you have what's called arov in Hebrew, which is flies or insects, challenging Khepri, or Capri, the scarab or the beetle god, which had the head of a beetle. Also challenged Baal Zavuv, which was not only an Egyptian god, but a Canaanite god, but it had influence in Egypt too, and Baal Zavuv means, of course, the master of the flies, Lord of the Flies. Death of livestock. The challenging Hathor, the cow goddess. This is meaning they had the head of a cow. And challenged Apis, the sacred bull, because they had the head of a bull. Struck at Ptah, to whom these sacred animals were connected to. So again, another three gods are related here. The boils, which is called Shechin, challenged Sekhmet and Isis, both associated with healing and with medicine. Particularly significant as Egyptian priests were rendered unclean and could not perform their duties. Hail and fire challenged Nut, the sky goddess. Also challenged Shu, the god of air and wind. Demonstrated power over Set, the god of storms. Arbe, the locust, challenged Min, the god of harvest and crops. Also challenged Osiris in the aspect of the god of vegetation. Showed dominion over Nephthys, which is the god of the crops. Darkness challenged the main god Ra, the sun god and the most powerful deity. Also challenged Horus, who is associated with the sun. Struck at Chot, the god of the moon and the heavenly lights. Death of the firstborn. Challenged Isis, protector of children. Also challenged Min, who is also the god of reproduction. Most significantly, challenged Pharaoh himself, who was considered a living god. So this sequence appears deliberately designed to demonstrate the power of the one god over specific Egyptian deities moving from the lesser to the greater. It starts with the nature deities of water and earth. It moves to the animal-associated gods and culminates in a challenge to the solar deities and to Pharaoh himself. Each plague specifically targeted areas supposedly protected by the Egyptian. So basically, God says to Moses, Uvechol Elohei Mitzrayim Eseh Shvatim Ani Hashem, meaning to all the deities of Egypt will I bring Shvatim, will I go against. Shvatim, I guess, could be translated as possibly as challenges or smite them. I will smite each one of the Egyptian gods. He meant it literally. In other words, through these 10 plagues, you can see that all the gods of Egypt, almost all the gods of Egypt, were challenged. So this obviously was very important for God through the 10 plagues. He wants the Egyptians to know. Now, did it work? To a certain extent, yes. It says that at one point, the servants of Paro, there were servants of Paro who were God-fearing. And because Moses said there was going to be a plague, they took their cattle and they brought them indoors. So you can see it was having some effect. And in the end, when Israel, in this week's Parashat Bo, at the end of chapter 12, leaves Egypt at midnight, it says, Ve'erev Rav Imam, they left with a mixed multitude. Many people left with them, non-Jews. That's why also in Shemot 12 it says they have to be circumcised in order to eat from the Paschal offering. This might have been said actually for the multitude, what they had to do if they want to eat from the Paschal offering. Of course, they could be they just joined after that. But the point is, a lot of people wanted to join. Who these people were, it's a little hard to know. Since it says a mixed multitude, I assume it was many people from many backgrounds. Could have been some Egyptians. Could have also been slaves, other slaves who were in Egypt. I've heard some theories about this, who might have been the other slaves. But the point is that people start realizing that there's one God, and the Egyptians too. And they wanted the Israelites to leave because they knew that the God of Israel is the all-powerful God. Now, we have a tradition that which means that the final redemption will mimic the Egyptian Exodus. Even Moses' name is the acronym, as it says in Ecclesiastes, what was, will be, and the world always stands. Meaning that the way we were taken out of Egypt, we will be taken out of the exiles in the future redemption. And what happens in the original redemption in Egypt? Egypt realizes there's only one God. And there's a mixed multitude who are willing to follow Moses into the desert, who knows how many thousands of people, because they now believe there's only one God. This is what's going to happen too. There is at the moment a lot of anti Semitism around the world during this war. There's also a lot of interest in the Jewish nation. And we as Jews, and specifically as the Jews living in the land of Israel, have to realize that, have to address this, and realize that for every anti Semite, there's somebody who's really interested in Jewish history, in Jewish tradition, in Jewish ideas, and hoping that we will impart something to the world which will be a blessing, because it says about it, but Abraham brings a blessing to all mankind. And it says, he who blesses you will be blessed, and he who curses you will be cursed. So we have blessings to bring to mankind, and we should discuss it. Not that the people have to be Jewish, but there is a contribution that the Jews can make to history. And I don't mean now a Nobel Prizes of science and medicine. I mean in understanding life, in understanding the human condition, in understanding what spirituality is, in understanding the relationship between God and man. And this is something that people want to hear and want to understand. And the more we talk about this, the more we spread it, the more we don't deny that we have ideas like this, people will be interested, and maybe the tides will turn. And somehow this will create real peace in the world, because in the end of the day, everybody's a human being. We have similar issues and similar problems all over this globe. But sometimes you have to hear the right words, and you have to educate the right way, and you have to understand your condition in order to make it in the right way. I'm talking very generally, but there's a lot to be said about this. And my own experience has been that many, many people are interested in the Jewish ideas. And that also makes us have the responsibility of understanding our sources correctly and transmitting them correctly. Shavua Tov may be a week of peace, happiness, and health for all. Shalom, shalom.